As we start here, now who can tell me the 3 C's of our product roadmap strategy? What are the 3 C's? No MetricStream employees, especially not the CEO. Three? Bingo, there you go. And what C is the... And what C is this session about? Wow. Alright. Alright. So folks, now you've come to believe in this day and age today, there cannot be a technology or business summit where we don't talk about generative AI or copilot. But thankfully, at MetricStream, we've been very purposeful and methodical in our investments in AI. And like Prasad mentioned earlier this morning, we've been at it for about 4 years. Now, our latest innovation that we want to preview here with you all is on the copilots, the GRC copilots. The GRC copilots will manifest in MetricStream across these 4 different areas. One will be on the MetricStream Aspire product that we launched last year. Now, Aspire is the industry's first automated decision-making software, the first in the GRC industry that we launched mid last year. Now, another area where you'll see the Copilot manifest itself is in the AI-infused workflows. We all know there are a lot of workflows in GRC applications. We've identified areas which could use AI infusion, and Copilot, the usability of those workflows have been elevated to the next level. Another area which is more for us from an internal operations and efficiency standpoint is on upgrades. Now we're looking at ways in which we can use these capabilities to also enhance the upgrade automation. And obviously all of these are anchored on the principle of governance. Now in this session, in the next few minutes, we'll look at some examples of how specific use cases of how GRC professionals can interact with the Copilot. So as we start here, one of the things that we've realized over the last year or so is the massive explosion in technology when it comes to AI and AI technology and AI models. So consequently, so we as a product company, I want to call us as being in the space of applied AI. We are not OpenAI, we are not like Microsoft, Azure, or Anthropic, or any of those firms that build these AI models. But we are folks that will use these AI models, tweak them, train them to make it purpose fit for GRC domain. So what we've done is provided a capability with Copilot where you could actually select what model source and algorithm you want to use. Of course, we have some popular models listed here, and we also have a GRC variant of these models. Now, as enterprise customers, you all may have certain partnerships already going with, let's say, Microsoft or Amazon, and you could bring your keys, plug it into an application, and start using it. Now, we'll get into a couple of use cases to see how exactly these copilots are being brought to life. Now, one of the use cases we want to talk about is that of controlled rationalization. Now, this is especially true when it comes to large enterprises, which are globally diverse, that have several lines of businesses, and over a period of time, a lot of these business units start having their own versions of controls. So there obviously is a need for some sort of governance on these controls to ensure that these controls, first of all, don't get out of hand. There's not a lot of duplication, and hence a lot of redundancies and wasted effort. So one of the things that we want to do with our AI offerings is to help customers in rationalizing controls. Now what you see here is the MetricStream application, and you have access to the Copilot on the bottom right of the screen. Now this version that we are reviewing with you all comes enabled with about 9 use cases, and you see these 9 use cases listed here. GRC professionals are able to interact with this chatbot, this agent, which is powered by generative AI technologies, and start interacting with these systems in a much nimbler and faster way. Well, you see here, you start off, and in this use case, you want to perform control rationalization. You have an ability to actually upload these control files, or have an ability to hook up to the backend systems for the chat agent to perform the rationalization activity. As you can see here, we've uploaded a CSV file that has the control data, and right off the bat, the system is processing all these. It's coming up with these insights, and also provides an ability to navigate to that part of the section of the screen which gives you more details about the processing it did. So now what you just saw over a few clicks was a GRC professional risk manager uploading a control file, and boom, you start getting these insights right at the back. Now what we see here on the control canvas essentially are the insights from the data and the processing that got done. In this case, this particular organization has about 2,000 odd controls, of which 76% controls seem fine, this blue section, but there is this remaining 24% of controls that seem to be redundant. Now they are redundant either because they are completely duplicate, where there's the same control language, or they are similar in the sense that kind of complementary to each other. Now we also slice and dice these controls across various groups. One, are these controls coming from the same scope, same line of business? Are these duplicate across lines of businesses, so on and so forth? Now obviously the business disposition of what you want to do with these controls are different based on the scope. Now you may have a situation where some of these controls are duplicate within the same scope, the same line of business, which you would want to believe is just slam dunk, simple redundancies. You could actually eliminate those duplicate controls. While some other cases where these controls are duplicate across lines of businesses may be a genuine case, because these controls are being tested for different kinds of businesses, so you might not want to delete them. However, there's an opportunity still to standardize these controls to see if the test procedures that are being followed across these kinds of businesses are similar, if the risks that these affect are similar, so on and so forth. Right? So to ensure there is a level of consistency across these controls. Now we'll also see how the AI models go to work. They're trying to also thematically group these controls where these redundancies exist. As a risk manager, you could double click into any of these areas and you're taken to a view that looks like this, where in this example you have this particular control that is ending with 553 and 867 that are duplicate, and these seem to be duplicate in the same line of business. Now this gives an opportunity for the risk manager to review these controls, to review the test history of these controls, and make a call on, yeah, these are slam dunk duplicates. I could actually eliminate or delete one of these controls, hence prevent unnecessary testing when I already have another control that's doing the same job. So these are some ways in which you could realize efficiencies. Now there are other capabilities that are built into the copilot that are not demonstrated here, which also gives you insights in terms of when exactly you need to test these particular controls based on signals. Now here's a bit of what's happening under the hood. Now all these blue dot circles you see here are the controls in the GRC environment, and this purple dot in the center essentially is the harmonized control that our AI systems have generated. So essentially what this is saying is, hey, out of those 2,000 controls that were there in the environment, the system was able to parse through each of them, find out where there are duplicates. It zeroed in on this particular cluster where all these controls are highly similar, duplicative. They are doing the same thing, but most likely they are being defined for different lines of businesses, different scopes. Now the system is able to pull all of them together and create a harmonized version. Now in this example, what you see essentially is there is this particular control that has several risks that are connected to it. It has a question procedure. This essentially is the test step for the question procedures that one has to follow for testing it. While all these duplicate versions don't have the test steps and the test procedures. So what this actually tells you is, well, these controls are duplicate, they're genuine. However, the consistent process that needs to be followed that is set forth by the second line is probably not being adopted in these specific controls. So this gives you an opportunity to standardize the way testing across these controls can happen. Now what we just saw was in the realm of taking decisions based on a whole lot of data. This other use case we wanted to demonstrate is in the realm of a workflow to see how using copilots we can actually automate the process of executing workflows. Now one of the use cases in the GRC domain that we come across most often is on vendor risk assessments. Specifically when it comes to IT vendors, there is always a need for continuous assessments of how well these IT vendors are performing. And you send out questionnaires, you send out surveys, and you also look for their SOC 2 ISO certifications, so on and so forth. A situation like this, you have the vendor management teams always looking for the data, reconciling the data to see what sort of compliance issues these vendors have, and hence what types of risks can come out of such vendors. Now what we've done here is an example use case where you have the copilot actually take on the work of analyzing the vendor SOC 2 reports. Now this is an example where this particular vendor SOC 2 report is being processed right in the back by the copilot. Now once the document is uploaded, the copilot goes through a series of motions. It understands that this is a SOC 2 document. It calculates the risk score by looking at the exceptions and the anomalies that are in this file. Now this particular typical SOC 2 files run anywhere from 80 to 100 pages, and this obviates the need for a human to go read through all these pages of documentation to see what kind of exceptions, anomalies exist. Now this is where the AI system is going to work. It's done its evaluation, it's come back with its findings. And it also provides a link where you can go see the dashboard of the results. So on click of that, you're taken to the third-party canvas. The system is assigning a score. It so happens that the system thinks that based on the SOC 2 that was provided to the system, the risk for this particular vendor is high. And it's also identifying what kind of thematic groups exist within those risks, and provides a way to take action. So this is essentially the list of all of these documents that have been processed by the copilot. Now you see here, this belongs to a certain third party. There are several other third parties in the mix. Now when you look at this, we're looking at one document. What we went through here was the system in a matter of a few seconds processing one PDF worth 80 to 100 pages, but you can easily imagine an enterprise having to deal with vendors in thousands. Now this is where a system like this comes in handy, where the AI system is doing the job of going through the documentation, identifying the anomalies, exceptions, and providing this list of potential actions the end user can take. Now in this case, it's also recommending an action. Now you can see how on click of this action, you're taken to the MetricStream issue management application. Now in this case, the copilot recommended that, hey, the right action to take for this case is to actually go along an issue and assign it to somebody who can work this. So as you can see here, the issue is automatically created. Not only is it created, some key fields of the issue are also auto-populated. Now one of the things for the issue is, what is the issue type? Is it a deviation from the policy? Is it, and what kind of actions should be recommended for this particular issue? And you see that based on the prior history, the system is able to recommend all of these and create an issue with all of these data populated. Now this is an example again where the AI system, copilot, is able to read the document, parse through it, recommend actions. Now those actions are provided to the subject matter expert to review and take the recommended actions. On click of recommended actions, all of those steps needed to manually create the issue is now taken care of by the copilot itself. It's created the issue. Not only has it created the issue, wherever possible, it has auto-populated fields and made this ready for the risk analyst to review, change as needed, and send the issue for approval. So this is another example where we've identified areas where copilot would actually do a lot of heavy lifting that humans otherwise have to do, but it provides the outcome for the end users to review. Can I take the questions towards the end of the meeting? Now, another area of AI, generative AI, and the promise of Gen AI when it started and when we were all able to go interact with ChatGPT was to ask questions and get results back. Obviously, in an enterprise setting, you would want to ask questions of your data. You say, hey, can I plug my data into a copilot or a generative AI system and just start asking questions and can in turn get reports back. So you'll see that we've enabled an option of Ask Me. Ask Me is where you can type questions about your data. Now in this case, the end user can type in a question from, hey, what are all those controls that have failed in a certain period of time. And as you can see here, as you're able to put these questions in, the system is able to understand what the question is. It's able to map back to the data it has at its disposal and come back with a dynamic report that looks like this. What's more, you also have an option of tweaking the report that is generated here and creating a version of the report that you think you want to create and share it with the rest of your organization. Again, it has options to go on the right side to share this particular report chart with the rest of your organization. So these are three use cases that we saw here, where the first one was about the MetricStream GRC copilot system being able to take decisions, which is built on top of Aspire. The second is in terms of automating some workflows, doing a lot of manual heavy lifting, and preparing the outcomes for the human to come in to review, accept or reject the outcomes. And the third was in terms of reporting. Now, having said all this, now we also understand one of the reasons why a lot of AI applications haven't really gone into production in large enterprises is because of this element of AI risk and governance. And we being in the space want to ensure that everything that we do is anchored on governance. And this goes back to our abilities to cater to GRC for AI. That is, how can you bring in governance into AI? Now we do have an ability to create model libraries within our product. So we're able to define different types of models, basically catalog all the models that the enterprise is using, identify what are all those risks that you want to track against this particular model. Now in this case, if Aspire was a model that the enterprise is using, which we hope all of you do, you could actually create all the risks, log and track the different risks that this particular model could be subject to. What's more, you can get into defining what the assessment factors are. Now I have this particular risk. Can I identify what my assessment factors could be to assess this particular risk? Can I then apply my traditional GRC approach of identifying what the inherent risk is based on these factors and provide that sort of a rating, the inherent risk rating, and then do the traditional approach of identifying what would be those controls that could be applied to mitigate these risks. Now here is an example of how this actually looks within the MetricStream application, especially in terms of handling AI risk. Now this is the example where the accessible item in this case is the GRC Aspire model, and all these different risks are assessed based on the factors that you all saw earlier. Now what's more, all of the capabilities that we have around defining controls, sending out control assessment tasks, periodically scheduling when the ongoing performance assessments of these models can be done, is all managed within the existing MetricStream applications. And of course, we also have tied into the issues capabilities to start creating and logging issues if there are things that need addressing and fixing. So with that, I want to again summarize the 4 different ways in which the copilots will manifest in the product. Now we looked at 3 of these, which is automated decision making using MetricStream Aspire, looked at how we can do AI-infused workflows with that example on vendor risk management, and we also got a flavor of how AI governance can be achieved in the MetricStream products. Of course, upgrades is something that we're sure you all will experience as we go through the upgrade to the new UI UX version. So that's all I had. Yeah, happy to take questions.
I think you headed in that direction with the answer. You were talking in your example, for instance, in the vendor assessment, right? It makes recommendations, including here's where the deficiencies are and X number of issues and so forth that get assigned. Does the model assessment then enable the user or somebody in an oversight function to say, okay, how many recommendations in the form of issues or changes or assignments did my copilot make that I agreed with, and is that something that can be analyzed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what probably you can see, and it was not captured here, was if you scroll all the way to the right, there's a thumbs up, thumbs down button, and that essentially is exactly that. Right? So as this model starts making those recommendations, you obviously want to have the element of whether the subject matter expert agrees with the recommendation and make it better next time around.
Yeah, and I think the term was used earlier in the day. It's been around for decades. The trust but verify.
Yeah.
Particularly in the first, early life of using this. Yeah, I think it's right, but do I really feel
Absolutely, yeah. And thanks, and that was a good question. And also add, as you saw in that particular example, the model read the document, it made the recommendations, and it also gave you an option to take the action, but it did not take the action itself. So that again is, we thought that's the right milestone to actually stop and not automate it the whole way. To your point, if the subject matter expert does not agree with it, we don't want these hundreds of issues to be created when the user does not really agree with the reason why it was created.
If the base analysis results in 7 issues, and those are distributed to 7 different people, you're inviting a little bit of confusion. So that
Absolutely.
That gatekeeper at the initial level sounds very wise decision.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. So essentially, also that's that whole differentiation between augmentation versus automation. And this is not new, as it's been around for a while. Now, right now, with all the Gen AI capabilities, we want to be at a stage of augmentation where there is always a scope for the subject matter expert, the human in the middle, to come and take corrective action if they don't disagree, rather if they disagree with the model's recommendation. Anything else?
I got a question.
Good.
Does the copilot take into account both variables? So if I'm a user and I've got a specific query that assigns me whether an issue or control of risk records, I would ask that question, will it make it response and my data or
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, so the way we've designed will absolutely account for those elements. Right? So as a user, what are you entitled to view? What are you entitled to run those inferences on? And there again is the advantage of having these built with a system like ours, because some of those authorization entitlement rules are already baked into the system, and whatever intelligence that you get is also assured of following those entitlement rules. It's on. Yeah.
Has the use case been explored for use in running assessments at scale, where you're asking hundreds of questions and requiring massive amounts of evidence, where you can quickly do a document summarization and match, does that evidence match the question? And then incorporating automated alerts or going back to the assessment responder, asking for additional evidence where you're just varying that.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of operational efficiency created there. Has that been, or is that implemented?
Yes, it's a great question. Now, the short answer to the question is yes. Now, in this version that we've reviewed, we are going with 9 use cases that we've weighted with our customers. They agree that this makes sense as version 1.0. But some of those other elements that you mentioned, like where when a user logs in, an analyst logs in to the system, they are coming to the application for a reason. It could be a control owner persona. It could be because it's time for the control assessment to happen. Now, in that case, when the user is coming in to do assessment alone, why go through the motions of finding out what is the task, clicking on the task, they usually come in with an evidence. Can we just have the copilot accept the evidence, process and open that whole control test outcomes for the user to do? So we are absolutely thinking about those use cases. Again, now the possibilities are immense in terms of what are those different areas that we can plug into the copilot to bring in the operational efficiencies. Absolutely.
So in terms of the organizations that have rolled out Copilot, have you seen the benefit of this being more on the organizational efficiency side, or has there been more lift on the effectiveness of the risk practice as a whole? And I don't know whether when this was developed, there was an expectation of either or being the beneficiary or the problem statement that you were trying to solve for. So I just want to get a sense in terms of how organizations have benefited from this and versus how, when this was developed, whether that was the intent behind it.
Sure. Actually, it's a good question. Now, in essence, using technologies like this, you can do one of two things. Right? So one, you can be efficient, that is, you're trying to identify those unnecessary, repeat, redundant activities. Can I shorten the time duration taken to perform those activities, or can I just eliminate those activities completely? So that speaks to the efficiency gain on one side, and the other side of it is, can I be more comprehensive in the kind of assessments, in the kind of tests that I can perform? Again, this goes back to looking at the landscape and saying, hey, maybe you have only 2,000 controls, but looking at all the signals, looking at your data, maybe you should have 100 controls more. So that's making it more comprehensive on the other side. So that's where that balance needs to be struck. Now, what we've seen with Aspire is when we launched our capabilities on Aspire, it caters to both. One is we are identifying those laptop areas that we think are highly redundant, there is efficiency gain, but it's not just on one side we are reducing these controls, but on the other side, we are also trying to make the whole process comprehensive. That is, we are looking into signals. We are looking at what are those issues, what are the observations, what are the cases, incidents that are occurring in the field, are there regulatory changes? Can we get all of those signals and then give a good recommendation on, don't necessarily wait for the next quarter to test this particular control. So many things have changed, maybe we want to do the testing right now. So that speaks to the other element of it.
So one of the paradigms to think about it, I kind of call it as the first brain, second brain, and third brain. The first brain is the brain of the user, right? Like, your biological element, if you will. Okay. Second brain is kind of the functions that are happening around it to provide compliance, governance, and so forth. That's the normal kind of GRC functions. But the third brain is what we're talking about it in AI Aspire, which is the thing sitting outside scanning for as much as it can for the data sets that are prevalent in your systems, but not just in your MetricStream system, but anything else out there that is being ingested into that AI Aspire and available through the copilot. Now what happens is, as you're navigating through your day-to-day journey, you are getting advantage of what the user is thinking, what the governance functions and controls that you've put together, but also have the third brain also working on your behalf to be able to see things that you anticipate doing. So I think the possibilities of this will, I think, go far beyond efficiencies and effectiveness. It might unearth gaps or silos or places where you have the leakage, if you will. Those leakages end up becoming the reasons why you have a security incident or a breach or other things. So we don't quite know yet. But the idea is that think about the GRC organization to be first brain, second brain, third brain, and can we actually layer these architectures on top of each other in a long-term kind of GRC strategy? So that's kind of the thought behind the copilot.
Okay, thanks, Manjit. Anything else? All right, thank you folks. As I wrap here again, I saw a lot of new people coming in. What are the 3 C's of our product strategy? Yes, always good things always come in 3s. Folks? All right, so with that we'll end. Thank you folks.
So,